set of tools that they can use to manage processes that they need to drive, but also how can they help both their school and their students connect with employers. We basically, our whole job is to help everybody kind of plan for the future. That's kind of what I say. Like if we can get people together, if we can connect a student in Beulah with a company in Williston and they're looking for each other but they can't find each other, if our system can help facilitate that, then that's a win. And then if we can help that student understand that that employer really wants to work with BSC for their programs or the U of Mary, or if they actually don't even need a degree, that employer will have a training program. Those are all things that we try to help the students learn about. And then we will actually also help schools incorporate some of that stuff into the things that they do every day, whether it be teaching students in a class, whether it be managing a work-based learning program, whether it be managing career exploration processes that actually every school is required to do for every student as part of their high school career. So you can see kind of our audience, all the different people that move or that log into Compass, that share information with each other. Our footprint is pretty substantial so far. We have over 23,000 students now that have profiles in our system, meaning we can know who they are, we know what their skills are, and we're making connections for them. We have over 600 employers that are logging in and creating information in Compass. On our employer side, we have free services, and then there are some paid services that employers can take advantage of. About 25% of our employers are taking advantage of those paid services, but we never want cost to be a barrier to how somebody can connect and get, basically connect with schools, connect with students, offer opportunities. We also have over 1,000 school professionals that we send communications to when new employers join our system, when new programs are posted in Compass from colleges, when new work-based learning opportunities are created. We know that driving awareness and communication in this space is really important, and everybody is just totally strapped when it comes to time. So the easier that we can make it for a teacher to understand that company ABC has posted a new work-based learning opportunity, if that teacher can find out about it and they know that there's a student that is a perfect fit, we hope that that teacher can also nudge the student to log in, check it out, and potentially apply. And at the end of the day, that email, that little nudge might actually change that student's whole trajectory because it'll create a connection that could lead to something awesome, both for that student and also for that employer. We also, our footprint, we are statewide in North Dakota through a partnership with Career and Technical Education, and Laura Glosser is here in the audience. Laura is a fantastic partner with us. Laura is part of Wade 6 CTE organization. So we do a lot of work with Laura when we're training people across the state, when we're talking to educators, even things like we just did at the PDC event. But we are also growing outside of North Dakota. We're growing in Minnesota. We're growing in South Dakota. We actually, next week, are going to be onboarding our first school in South Carolina that we had met at a national conference that I'll talk about a little bit. So we do want to be national, but we also want to make sure that we're preserving those local connections. So we've even architected in our system a way to make sure that people in this part of the country see things that they should see, and people in the southeast part of the country see things that they should see, which again goes back to that whole where I have the luckiest job, because not only do I get to work with really awesome people here, but I get to know other awesome people in other states and learn about the initiatives that they're driving too. So that's a little bit about who we are and what Compass does, or how it's built. Just to go into a little bit more detail about some of the processes that we drive for those different audiences. I've talked a lot about some of these things, but really for students, we want to help them find their future career and actually help them even get connected with a company that they might work for the long term. That also includes helping students understand sponsorships. So how many of you are familiar with the North Dakota Career Builders program? Okay, and how many have had students or have heard about companies that are willing to pay for a student's tuition in exchange for work commitment? We want to help students understand those types of programs, also apprenticeships and scholarships. So in the system, we kind of feel like all of these connections and all of the stuff that a student can do to learn if this is the right career for me or this is the right employer for me, that there actually could be an incentive for that student to stay with that employer. And we know that for employers, one of the biggest things right now is still workforce. And it's not even like numbers anymore. It's also, how do I find people that have the skills that I'm looking for? So one element of this is, how do we help educators know what skills they need to be teaching students for the future? And we're seeing a lot of activity right now in AI or precision ag or some of these like drones and UAS. How do we help educators understand what those jobs are? And then what are the skills that students need for those jobs? And then how do we even help students understand what those jobs are? And do I need a degree? Should I go to UND? Should I go to NDSU? Do I even have to go anywhere? Those are all things that we're trying to do with the students and with the schools. One of the big milestones for us for the school side is helping manage work-based learning for high schools. This could be anything from like a job shadow to an internship to a summer job to a cooperative work experience. And kind of going back to that mission of connection, if we can connect a student with an employer and they can have an experience while the student is still in high school that goes well, it gives the student the ability to know, like, is this the right company for me? Does the culture align to what I'm after? It gets the employer a chance to get to know the student, and we kind of hope that that will lead to something long-term. It also is tied to funding. So CTE actually gets dollars from the federal government based on how many students are having work-based learning experiences and things like that. So kind of, again, a win-win for the student, for the employer, and also for the school and the system. For employers, we really want to help them get connected. One of the biggest things that we heard from employers when we first started this work is they might have had a good relationship with one school, but they didn't really know how to connect with other schools. So they ended up really focusing in on just maybe their immediate geographic location, and they didn't really have the time or energy to invest in like spreading out their connections and awareness of what they do. So by having Compass, they can create an account and they can share their information automatically with over 300 schools, including in different states. And that is a huge advantage for them to drive brand awareness, to get the name out. Even if they're not offering opportunities, at least they're driving awareness of what they do in their industry. That actually is one of our visions, is like, how do we continue to expand that? So we make it easy for employers to connect and get started, but then they can share their information out with schools across, maybe a 3 or 4 state region, and they don't have to worry about what system the school is using or how the school is managing their processes. We kind of take care of that with Golden Path. And finally, colleges. That is a new area that we've just added. So we have 6 colleges, and also Linus Welding, if any of you are familiar with them. How do we help them talk about their programs with students? And also, how do we help them identify the employer relationships that they have? The companies that are willing to help pay for tuition or are even maybe donating equipment or professors or time to a college to help students there get the skills that they need for their future job. And that's actually been really exciting. It's just, again, kind of a way of building out our ecosystem. So those are a little bit of the things that we do. There's a lot more, but those are some of the key things that we try to do for all of our audiences. One of our strategies, again, is how do we make everything kind of a win-win? So if we can solve this problem for the college, how do we help that then also solve a problem for the employer? Or if we can help the student learn about this, can we also help the student learn about this other thing, or how do we get a connection? And that's one of our design principles when we're working on new features within Compass. We'll usually understand what is it that one of our audience needs, and then we think about how does that help the other audiences and tie it all together. So our journey, a little bit, kind of going into the spirit of Million Cups, talking about the entrepreneurial journey, not so much about what we do, but kind of how we got here. So again, we started Compass, Golden Path Solutions, we started it in 2019. We actually did quite a bit of research before 2019. We talked to a lot of employers, we talked to students, we actually talked to some schools I'm in Fargo, so we talked to some of the local schools there. Some traditional schools and also some innovative schools, like Northern Cass was one of our first schools that we visited with. And we just kind of got a sense, like, is this something that would be beneficial? Is there value here? And the answer was yes, so we started building it. So that was in 2019. You can kind of see our timeline here. I would say one big milestone for us was after we had some employers and some schools on board, that's when we started talking to CTE. And CTE basically had this need for a work-based learning management system, which required employers to be in the system, students to have ways of looking at things, some kind of matching process. These were all things that we had a skeleton of. So we basically entered into an agreement with CTE to build out that work-based learning piece. And that was a big kind of way for us to get more employers involved and also drive more adoption across the entire state. including all the trainings and all the communications and everything that we do. We also partnered with Watford City in 2023 on a community solution. So how many of you are familiar with RWIP, the RWIP program that the North Dakota Department of Commerce drives? It's basically a workforce incentive program trying to help individual communities drive ways of building the workforce that they need. So we partnered with Watford City to build a way for them to highlight their community and all the different employers that are kind of strategic to their community, the opportunities they're offering, incentives. And that actually helped us then build the college piece, the college-facing piece, where we can now say, here's BSC's information, here's all the stuff that they want students to know, and also the employers that they partner with. So that was, again, another big milestone for us because it helped us expand the functionality of Compass. We started presenting at some national conferences. There's a group that we do a lot of work with called ACTE, and they have a vision conference where educators from across the entire country come and speak and talk and visit and learn with each other. And we actually presented at that, and that was kind of what led to our onboarding a South Carolina school, which we'll be doing next week. So it's just been really fun to like kind of grow and see this, but it's also shown me that there's a huge opportunity. Because again, kind of like I said before, every school in every state are kind of doing different things. Some have systems that they use, some don't have any systems. Some are using products like Compass, some are using spreadsheets to manage all this stuff. Employers are connecting with one school, but maybe that's it because they don't know how to connect with. RDO equipment based in Moorhead, there's a gentleman there that does a lot of recruiting and he drives all around the region. So Montana, Wyoming, Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota. He said that he's got like 25 different accounts in different systems to try to connect with schools. And RDO is a large organization and he's paid full-time to do that work, which is good for him. But if you're a smaller organization, there's no way you could manage that complexity. So what we've been doing at these national conferences is talking to other vendors. Are there ways that we can integrate our information with yours and make it easier for employers to participate, but also like conserve whatever processes your local school is using for career exploration and all the different things that they're doing. Basically integrate with their system, kind of like what we're doing in North Dakota, integrating with the system that's used here too. So that's been fun, but that's a technology challenge that requires some agreements on protocols and APIs and all this other technical stuff. But those are some of the things that we're kind of working on next. And then another big milestone for us was in 2024. The North Dakota Department of Public Instruction actually recommends that our system Compass be used for what's called the 4-year rolling plan for the student. And if any of you have students in school, they are required to do this once per year. The 4-year rolling plan is essentially a map of what the student is going to do in high school. So a 9th grader fills it out and kind of predicts what they're going to do in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. An 11th grader kind of updates their historical stuff, but then what are they going to do for 12th grade? It's a really great way to interact with their counselor, with their teachers, and kind of figure out what their plan is for high school. Since we are the solution for that, we can use all that information to then match the student to these opportunities. But another benefit of that is we can also take that data and share it with DPI and CTE and potentially higher ed, and basically say, in this part of the state, there could be a shortage of students that are going into health sciences because they're not taking health sciences classes. Or there could be a shortage, or maybe there's a surplus of students that are going into engineering roles that might be beneficial for oil and gas. And what we want to do is like, how do we take that data and then help inform, like are you going to need teachers and what teacher expertise are you going to need? Or where are your communities going to have to do recruiting because there could be a shortage of a certain skill set? Or even like where should colleges be targeting for admissions because that program that UMary is trying to drive, there's a set of students in this particular region that might be a good fit for that. Those are some of the things that we're now working on with Job Service, with CTE, with DPI, even the North Dakota University system. That standardized data could become really powerful when it comes to workforce and all that good stuff. So I think, from our perspective, we want to keep growing, driving communication, awareness of what we do, getting more employers into the system. Those are all super important to us. The way we see it is the more stuff that we can get in, the more employers, the more work-based learning opportunities. That's more opportunity for students, it's more opportunities for them to learn, and it ultimately is going to help our state with workforce and helping make sure that our companies have the skills and the resources that they need to grow. So my last slide, and then I'll take some questions. What we've learned. So if I could talk to the me of 2019, what would I tell him? Would I be like, you got this, or don't worry about this as much as you did, or you really need to focus on that? I think one of the things that maybe we didn't appreciate is how hard it is to build a brand new ecosystem. And when we talk about an ecosystem, we're talking again about schools, employers, students, state and local government, all the people you saw in that first slide. It actually takes a lot of time to do that, to basically get everybody on board with the system, to know who we are. We've had the benefit of some amazing partnerships in local communities, including educators, chambers of commerce, economic development, companies that are advocates for this. It seems like in every community that we've gone into, there's always one or two champions that kind of spearhead things. And what we're basically trying to figure out is how do we take advantage of that, especially in schools like in South Carolina, where I can't come to an event like this and talk to a bunch of people. It's just not physically possible. So how do we drive partnerships to help build that ecosystem? But once we build it, the benefits are amazing. I still, going back to my optimism, I see like when people work together to solve a problem, it's incredible like what the solutions can be. But sometimes just getting them to talk is the challenge. But once you get them in a room, the possibilities are endless. And I'm a big believer that state and local government can help facilitate that, because they are the groups that kind of look after everything and kind of have the commonality and can bring different groups together. And we've even seen employers collaborate that technically are competing for the same resources. So yesterday at the CTE conference, I think there were maybe 5 or 6 equipment dealers that are looking for diesel techs. That's the hot job. If anybody here is looking for a second career, I can hook you up with a company that'll pay for your tuition, your diesel tech degree. But they're like all having lunch together and they're talking because they understand that if one of them wins and somebody comes into the industry, that's good for the industry. And driving those connections and part of that ecosystem is really, really critical. We want to make sure that we're solving problems for our audiences. One thing we've learned is, especially in education, there is so little time that they have to do new stuff. So the more that we can solve problems that they're currently needing to solve, that actually is going to drive more usage and more adoption of our platform. And a big example of that goes back to that 4-year rolling plan. If that is a requirement by DPI, every student has to do that at least once a year. If we can make that process easier, but then also use that information for all of our career exploration and our matching, then we've actually solved a problem for the educator, and now we're providing a benefit for the student. So that's huge, and we always think about that when we're building new features. Another feature we just released, we talked about yesterday, educators can create events now in Compass and push those out to employers. So like a career fair, or if a school wants to have like a health sciences day and invite a bunch of health providers to their school, they can send that information out. We've just made the teacher's job easier because they don't have to do all the marketing, and we've actually improved the employer's experience because now they know about those events that before they maybe completely missed, or they had to dig around to find information. So again, kind of a win-win. Our audiences work at different speeds. Primarily education. This has been something that we've actually had to educate our employers on. Like a good example is True North Steel in Fargo publishes a work-based learning opportunity to students in the Fargo and West Fargo School District. They might expect applications, in a week or two. But the way that the school operates is they don't have students enroll in those experiences until the next semester. So they might not get any activity until maybe August or September after summer. So part of our role is how do we translate all that stuff so that the employer knows what to expect, but also the school, we can support the school's timeline and their processes. And I would say that's even in terms of decision making. We find sometimes employers are very quick to make decisions. Educators, state and local government, sometimes it takes quite a bit of time to do it. So we just need to stay visible, keep driving the value that we drive, and then slowly they'll come on board. But I think that was another thing that we didn't appreciate when we first started. And then the last point is people are amazing. I kind of talked about that at the beginning, but I want to close with that. Again, we get to work with the best people. We get to work with teachers. Like in one day, we might work with like 3 employers, 2 educators, a superintendent, 2 students, and maybe somebody in commerce. Like I don't know who gets to do that. Like there aren't a lot of jobs where you get to work with all of those different people, especially as a private organization. And I think that is such a benefit. I feel very fortunate to be able to do that. And we also get to see the best side of everybody. And I want to give a shout out actually to the schools. I think the schools have gotten a hard time lately with, all this stuff going on politically. But honestly, our schools, and particularly CTE, they are the engine that is going to be driving our future workforce. And what we always hear from employers is we want students that can think for themselves, they have critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, communication skills. All that stuff is happening in the schools, and we see it every day, and it's amazing, especially at these new CTE centers that are going up across the entire state. And so we want to continue to accelerate that, but we also want to make sure that employers are connecting into that. Because the more that employers can see that, and the more that employers can influence that education, again, it's just going to drive value for our state. Maybe not tomorrow. When we're working with these students, if you want to find an employee tomorrow, we're not that solution. But if you want to develop the long-term roadmap of workforce in North Dakota, that's where we want to see more employers investing in the work that we're doing with CTE, more support for the programming that they're offering, more experiences for students. The other thing is CTE is not just the trades, and it's not just those more technical jobs. We're seeing interest in AI now. Quantum computing we're going to be working with a company that wants students to understand quantum computing and how that is different than traditional computing. Just a lot of really interesting things. And so we also get to be at the forefront of all the workforce development initiatives that are happening, and then we can figure out how can Compass support all that. So yeah, I just feel very fortunate. I appreciate you all letting me come and hang out with y'all for a little bit and kind of getting an update on where we're at. It's good to see some of you in the audience that are our friends and familiar faces. And if you want to learn more about Golden Path, if you want to learn more about what we do, you can email me or call me. We also have social media where we try to highlight new events or new employers that are joining the ecosystem, new initiatives. Just how do we keep everybody up to date on what we're up to? So feel free to follow us to join any of that. And if any of you in the room want to see a demo or have ideas, we also like not-for-profits. We're trying to help support them and the work that they're doing and getting them connected with talent that they need. Please let us know. We're always looking for ways to make Compass support people and support groups in ways that maybe we haven't thought of yet. So with that, I think I will close, and then I will maybe open it up for Q&A. I'm not 100% sure on the process, but does anybody have any questions or anything that they want to add or anything? Laura, if you want to share anything from a CTE perspective, feel free. But yeah, any questions for me?
Let's give it up for Patrick for the presentation.
Yeah. Sorry, did I jump the gun on the question?
Oh, have a seat. No, before we get started, one remiss here is that it's the National Day calendar. It is Root Beer Float Day. It's a very important day that you should celebrate, so make sure you celebrate every day, but with a root beer float. So wanted to give that out too.
Can I just ask a question to Marlo? I'm fascinated by this now. What day has the most things associated? Which day has the least?
You're talking about the numbers on
Yeah.
That varies every year because you might have, thanks for bringing up the long question. But you might have, the first day of summer, right? And then that lands on a Saturday, and there's a lot of days that would be on the third.
Okay.
Thank you. That would be on the third Saturday of the month. It's also the first day of summer, and there's some national days that fall on the first day of summer. And then there's also days that fall on that particular day. The first day of summer can be the 18th to the 22nd. So I'm giving you an example. It varies every year.
That is a very technical, it sounds more
Sorry-
complicated than I
sorry
thought it
about
was.
that.
I thought it was going to be like February 3rd, there's
No.
like, it's the national day of
The most popular day is Girlfriend's Day.
Girlfriend's Day.
Yes, that happened just a few days ago, so, yeah.
Who gets like February 29th? Is that reserved for Rare Disease Day?
No, seriously, yeah.
So seriously, I think if we can, would it be okay? Could I wrap my stuff up early and then could Marlo come up here? Because I kind of want to listen to him talk a little bit.
So before we get started, I think we've been remiss in the future. Who is Patrick? Tell us a little bit where you're from, long walk on the beaches or whatever it is, but tell us a little bit about yourself and then how this all came about.
Yeah. So going back to the skills that our employers are looking for, like I said, problem-solving skills, communication skills. I was an English major, believe it or not. I went to Morehead State University as an English major. I was originally going to be like a doctor, and I was going to do pre-med. That's because I had a girlfriend whose dad was a hospital administrator and wanted her to marry a doctor, and I actually enjoyed chemistry and all those things. But I thought I was going to be an English major and a math major because that would help me get into med school. I realized very quickly that I did not want to be in school for that long, so I ended up graduating with an English major and thought, at the end of the day, that's like, what am I going to do with an English major? But I think one of the things that taught me is, first, a love of learning, and also with my math major, it was also problem solving. And so in all of my jobs, I've always done things that I didn't have a background for. I was actually a finance director at Microsoft for a while. I was next to people that had MBAs from Harvard and Northwest and all these different things. And I'm, again, an English major from Morehead State University. When people would ask me, they thought Morehead, Kentucky. That was the closest thing they knew for Morehead. But again, passion around problem solving and communication. And so I think when I see something, a problem to solve, I kind of get lasered in on it. And that actually, I started a consulting business after I left Microsoft and was working with Bobcat Company, and doing a lot of different consulting projects for them. And one role that they were trying to fill was this really unique role it was kind of like a mix between a marketing person and an IT person, but they couldn't find somebody that was good at it. They'd last for like 3 or 4 months and then they'd leave. And my problem-solving brain went in, and it was like, what if we could figure out how to help a student understand what cool job this is, but then get connected with the student before they go to college, so that student could maybe get a degree at NDSU, in marketing and a minor in IT or something like that, and then have some kind of relationship with Bobcat that would last for a while. Again, just total problem solving, but then started visiting with people, and that's kind of what led to Golden Path. And that is what I am. I'm a problem solver. So if Laura comes to me and some school's having an issue or there's some process that we need to figure out, vocational rehab, how do we help drive more employers, help them understand how they can connect and work with students and their clients and workforce, then I immediately go into problem solving mode. And the cool thing is we have technology. We have a platform where we can support that. So that's kind of my thing. And then I think going back to working with amazing people, because I love learning, if I spend an hour with you talking about what you deal with higher ed, if I spend an hour with you talking about vocational rehab, if I spend half hour talking to Marlo about National Day Calendar and entrepreneurship, to me, that's a good day, and I get to do all that with Golden Path. So I think that's why this is a good fit for me personally.
Great. Questions? Flag down Ross, and he'll be able to ask that. I have one. You have a lot of moving parts on there, colleges and employers and students. Which ones do you spend your most time working with, and which ones are the ones that are in need of a little bit more? Like, are students needing to be known about this a little bit more, or how do you do that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I actually think it's changed a little bit over time. So when we first started Golden Path, when we were working with individual school by school, we did spend a lot of our time working within the schools and actually even with the students. So I can't tell you how many classes I was in front of students, teaching them how to fill out their Compass profile and go through all this stuff with them, which was actually really helpful for me because it helped me appreciate the work that teachers do. When you've got some students that are super engaged, some students that are totally disinterested, a student that's falling asleep in the back, that was hard for me. I didn't like that. But at the end of the day, it helped us, even think about like what are the features we should add and how do we make it more engaging. So I'd say at the beginning we did a lot of that work in the classroom and with schools. I think as things have progressed, we're actually probably doing more work with the educators and giving them the tools that they need to work with the students. And then we get feedback from them. We still like to be with students and we'll go to career fairs, and I think that's something that we'll always want to do, but we can't be in every classroom, especially being in Fargo. It's hard for us to get out to Williston or to Watford City or Dickinson, but we like to. So career fairs are another good way of doing that. I would say too, lately, my role has been probably more working with agency leaders. So like Wade Sick, Superintendent Baszler, Katie Ralston within Commerce, Lisa Johnson with the North Dakota University System, kind of going back to how do we make all of this stuff work better and how do we get everybody kind of aligned, but also how do we make sure that we're not doubling up on other things that those people are working on, because that can also be a detriment for employers to get involved. If, like I go back to Andy Lukens with RDO, if he has to deal with 25 different systems, he might just throw his hands up in the air and be like, I'm just going to work with these 2 or 3. So we're always trying to figure out how do we make all that stuff work better, and getting feedback and input and kind of what's the vision look like from those agency leaders is super important. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Question, obviously you're focused on students, and employers and all of that. What about adults? Are you incorporating that, or are you planning to incorporate the ability for adults? We work with a lot of students, but we also work with, all up to 80.
Yeah, so the question, if you didn't hear it, is do we work with adults? So actually, as part of the Watford City Community Project that I mentioned to you, we did create a way for adults and college students and high school students to have different experiences in Compass when they logged in. So we actually do have the ability for adults to log into Compass. And because we have, 600 employers that are sharing information about themselves, I think 150 career profiles, all these different things, to me, it would be a crime if all that information was locked up and not available to adults or college students or anybody that wants to see it. Having said that, we have not marketed the adult piece very much because, again, we don't want to confuse adults on what systems they should use, or even employers. So I would say for right now, if we were talking to an employer about recruiting adults, we would say, Job Service, Indeed, Monster, those are probably your best bets. If there's a certain targeted type of adult you're looking for, something you really want to get out to them, then you can create opportunities in Compass and you can share those with adults. And we actually did a project with the Greater Fargo-Moorhead EDC around manufacturing for adults, trying to recruit people to North Dakota. Having said that, we do want to explore, could we integrate with the solution that Job Service uses, Geographic Solutions, I think it's called. Or could we ever share information with a Monster or an Indeed? And that's where AI comes into play. I think, Marla, we had a very high-level conversation on AI, but could we ever do something where we could take a Monster job posting, pull it into Compass, let AI convert it into language that a student understands, along with all the classes, activities, and hobbies that you might want to do as a student, so that it makes it easier for those jobs to get in front of students, but it also isn't as boring as a typical job description, which I haven't been looking for a job for a while, but when I do go out there, they're terrible. They're not exciting, they're not fun. You'd sometimes read it and you don't even know what the job is. So that's not going to get a student interested. But then could we go the other way? Could we take a career profile and some of our information and then push that out to a Monster or an Indeed for that adult recruiting piece? So I think that's still something that we're working on, is there a good use case for adults with what we're building? And how do we integrate with other systems that have figured that out and do a good job with that? Yeah.
How has your company grown? Do you have staff?
Yep. Yeah, so we started out, when we started out, we had, I think it was me and a contractor developer that I actually had worked with at a company before I went to Microsoft. And then, and it was really just the two of us. And then there was another gentleman that owned a recruiting company, and he was providing some insight. Again, somebody I had worked with before. It's kind of interesting how when we start new things, we kind of go to the people that we trust. Now we've got a team of developers. We have a writer. She does a lot of our career profile development, but also some of our marketing stuff. We have a solutions manager. Actually, he's a former educator in Breckenridge, so a Minnesota school. But he helps me understand how do schools see the world, and then how does that convert into how we see the world and how employers see the world. So he is involved in like implementing new schools, onboarding new employers. We actually have an intern that's been with us for quite a while. We met this person when he was, I think he was a senior at West Fargo High School. We wanted to get feedback from students on our application, and this kid was amazing. And so we ended up bringing him on as an intern, and he kind of provides us with our student-facing piece. He was actually, not to break him up a little bit, but he was the state president of DECA. So again, going back to CTE, DECA like got this kid just so awesome how he communicates with people. His father is a big proponent of DECA, and now his little brother was the state president of DECA too. So there's like there's a DECA lineage here that we're trying to support with Logan, who's on our team. So yeah, and I think we're trying to figure out, do we continue to grow our headcount with Golden Path? Do we drive more partnerships in regions like, again, South Carolina that we're in? And how do we give some of our tools for how we onboard employers? How do we give those to local chambers or EDC? And can we even make that a benefit on the things that they're offering their employers? And we actually are doing a pilot with Detroit Lakes. Anybody been to Detroit Lakes in Minnesota? Wild July 4th parties, crazy downtown scene. That's what I always remember growing up with Detroit Lakes. But they have a very, very robust work-based learning program and an engaged chamber. So we're going to partner with their chamber to do some things, and we're also looking at partnering with the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber on a few initiatives. And the Williston Chamber has been very good too about promoting our stuff. And so we're seeing, is that a model that could help us scale without adding a bunch of staff?
Great. Well, since you've been on this stage before, we always ask the one question. Ross, you want to do that for us, or did somebody grab that? Ask that last question for us, and we'll help.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you very much for your presentation. What can we, as the 1 Million Cups community, do to help you to continue to succeed?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer that in two ways. And I knew this question was coming because I've done this before, and I love the question. And we actually do the same thing when we have people present with Golden Path, especially like community presentations. I would say for Golden Path, I think we want to just continuously get feedback on kind of how we can make things simpler and easier. I think one thing that keeps me up at night is just like, is our application easy enough for a student to use? Are we getting the word out? Are we putting too much of a burden on the teacher that's going to prevent them from really using our stuff? Because honestly, the more that our things get used, the more opportunities there will be for students. There could be a student out there right now in maybe a school that we haven't gotten to yet, like Bowman. We haven't done a lot of things in Bowman for whatever reason, but there could be a student out there that would be a great fit for one of our sponsorships, and we don't want that student to miss out just because maybe they haven't seen the app or they haven't gotten to it. So how do we get the word out? How do we communicate? We're trying to communicate more with parents, with teachers. So anything that we can do, or anything that you can do to help us communicate what this is and how people can get involved, and also give us feedback on how we can make things easier, I think that's probably the first thing I would say. And then maybe the second thing I would say is, it's not for us, but for us to be successful, we rely on educators, we rely on state and local government, we rely on employers, and we need them to be able to do the things that they're good at and to feel good about their work. And so I would ask you, give a shout out to your teacher, or give a shout out to your kid's school. Support your local CTE program, or even just your school in general. I just think there's so much awesomeness that's happening in the schools, and in my mind, if they're not successful, if we make it harder for them to do their job, that's going to come back and bite us from a workforce perspective in 4 or 5 or 6 years. We need students to be engaged. We need students to be critical thinkers. And so, and honestly, sometimes when we present with our teachers, I'm like, you guys are on the front line of workforce development. You don't get treated that way. A lot of times we think of workforce development as like job service or the HR teams or going to the SHRM conferences. But I honestly think workforce development is happening right now in that 10th grade computer sciences class, or that health careers class, that 11th grade health sciences class. We got to make sure that those folks have the tools that they need to be successful. So give a shout out to them. Do whatever you can to support your local schools and your local programs.
Thank you. Give it up for Patrick.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
And I believe there is a 1 million cups next week, leveraging a business. Marlo, Mike, Arnie, you'll be up on this stage. And don't forget the 20th. We're on the road. We're in Mandan. You're going to have a great time. We'll round out the month there is upcoming events. Good Kids Brand Studio, the 20th. So we've got a lot of good presentations. So thank you very much. Have a